Hey, Giant Builders. So today's guest is a luxury wedding planner. And so we've got some great tips for you if you are planning a wedding or have somebody in your family who is. So let's check it out.
Building spirituality, family, health, and business. This is the Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.
Hey, Giant Builders. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. And don't forget, my social media links are below, so make sure you follow us. So today's guests are Taryn and Danny, and they are wedding event planners, and they do an amazing job. And since to me, two of the biggest points of a family life are weddings and babies. So we're going to get some insights on the current wedding conditions. So welcome, Taryn and Danny. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much for having us.
We're
Yeah,
excited to
well,
be here.
great. Why don't you ladies tell us a little bit about your business?
Our business is called Terrence Stark Wyant Event Planning and Design, or TS WED for short. We are a luxury destination wedding planning firm that services weddings worldwide. We have been in the industry for coming up on 14 years next month. So we're really excited and grateful to still be able to do what we love and to do it together. We specifically service luxury weddings for destination clientele. That's for clients that are looking to travel or are looking to have the majority of their guests travel for the wedding. And so we do both the planning, and then Danny especially does the design of those events.
Great. You want to add anything, Danny?
No, I think Taryn really covered it. I mean, we travel all over the world wherever somebody wants to go, and we design each of our events is very specific to that couple and to their vision and their families and their cultures. And so each wedding we do is specifically designed for them, and the story they're wanting to tell and the vision they have. So it's a really fun job. We're very lucky to get to do it.
Oh, great. All right. So what inspired you ladies to specialize in destination weddings?
Oh, that's a great question. And the answer is not as glamorous as maybe some other people would have. It's that I was raised in Maui, Hawaii. And so when I started doing weddings, all of my clients inherently were destination clients. It was people coming from the mainland or Australia or Canada, flying into Maui to host their weddings. And so the vast majority of my experience started with destination weddings and that clientele. And I ended up absolutely falling in love with them. And I love the experience of being able to be someone's boots on the ground while they're not present and being able to serve them in that way. But Danny has a little bit of a different story.
I started in luxury wedding or sorry, luxury hotels. Started in DC and then I was out in California for a bit. And then I made my way out to Hawaii as well. And so I kind of coming up through hotels, I loved travel. I loved being able to move around and go to different places. I was a bit of a hotel snob and really like cool old hotels and cool old locations. And all through that time, I've just had a passion for weddings and wedding design. And so I was always kind of moving my way into the wedding world while working through hotels, which led me to doing events out in Maui with a hotel. And then that's how Taryn and I connected. And then, the stories kind of goes from there.
Yeah.
I've been working together for like 7 years.
7, we've decided.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, how do you begin the process of understanding a couple's story and translating that into their wedding design?
That's a great
Great.
question.
Yeah. So it really is just conversations with our clients, right? So they generally start speaking with Taryn at first. And with Taryn, they'll kind of discuss the overall, the big picture, right? How many guests, roughly, what season of the year, if there's anything specific they want location wise. And then once we have some of those more tailored down, then I will have a bigger conversation with them that includes questionnaires and phone calls and a few back and forths where we discuss who they are as a couple, right? So we ask them their story, how they met, both individually, how they came to be where they're at now, but also together, where their families are from, if they have any cultural or something significant that they want to really point out or bring up or have their event surrounding. we go from there to just who they are in their regular day. What are some of their hobbies? You know, how do they decorate their home? What are some colors that make them really happy? What are things that they don't like? Sometimes it's easier for people to say what they don't like than what they do like.
Mhm.
So we'll check in with that and just kind of connect and get to see who they are on a personal level. And then from there, we go into the design world. You know, what does that story look like from a visual perspective? How can we have their wedding day be a conversation about their love story? And how do we incorporate all of their guests into that with them?
Great. Well, planning weddings in so many diverse locations like
Mhm.
Hawaii and Europe, there must come some kind of unique challenges. What were the most like surprising or the most rewarding challenges you faced?
Oh, I think that I'll address the surprising one, Danny. I think that one of the most surprising challenges that we addressed was when we were breaking into the European market. And so the way that this happened was we actually ended up having a client who was interested in either Maui or Lake Como. And we said, oh, well, we can go either place because who doesn't want to go to Lake Como, even though we never ever serviced an event in Europe before. They said, really, that's great because we love you. So let's do it. And Danny and I both went, oh, shoot, like we better get some experience in Europe before we go service this couple's wedding day. And so we ended up curating a couple of different editorial shoots, one in Paris and one in Italy. And in preparing for that, we partnered with some really sensational vendors, both from the mainland US and in Europe. But the trick came when we got to traveling. So we, of course, were traveling from Maui at the time to Europe, and that's a really long haul. As I'm sure you can imagine, if you take into account like all the travel time and layovers, it's about 30 hours of traveling. And we had, because it was editorial shoots, we had brought a ton of stuff from Maui that we had like purchased for the shoots. We, rented gowns, we rented tuxes. We had all sorts of goodies, calligraphy, and just all sorts of things in our suitcases. And the trauma started, and I say trauma on purpose. The trauma started in Canada, and we were in Toronto. Was it, Danny? I
Yep.
think it was Toronto.
Yeah.
And our flight from the West Coast had gotten in a little bit late to Toronto, and we already had kind of a tight layover. And so Danny and I just, I mean,
Printed.
booked it. Like we've never run faster in our lives. Danny had the stupidest suitcase ever. I love you. It was awful. It was like a briefcase, but it was the
So
hardcover.
heavy. I
Oh,
mean,
it
it's a
was so
beautiful
heavy.
Samsonite. It's very old school and vintage, not cohesive for running
Mm-mm.
through an airport.
No, no, terrible. And so we sprinted. I mean, we sprinted, 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 and we got to our gate as they were closing the door, truly, and they wouldn't let us on. And the reason they said they wouldn't let us on is they said, well, your luggage won't make it. And we said, that's fine. You can send the luggage after the door hasn't closed. We need to get on this plane. And they wouldn't let us on the plane. And so we had a full moment. We got on the next plane, which was like 4 hours later. So we were late getting in. We didn't leave ourselves enough time to be late getting in. We had an event that evening. And when we got there, all of our luggage was gone. It did not make the flight 4 hours later. And we did not see that luggage for either of our editorial shoots. So 14 days, that luggage was gone. And so that really, I'm so grateful that it happened because it taught us so much. Now, was I sobbing in the bathtub, fully clothed, as soon as I got to
Airport.
Paris? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was.
In your airport clothes still too.
My airport clothes, speaking to my mom on the phone, telling her what a mistake I made in my career. But I'm so glad that it happened because that taught us so much about what it takes to travel for destination weddings as opposed to just being on Maui and letting the destination weddings come to us. It taught us about what to do and what not to do, how much time to leave before an event that you have to get there early, what to bring and not bring, what to check and not check. So it was a tremendous learning experience for us, and it was awful.
Yeah, you can't really beat that one.
Oh, so bad.
Danny, what's one of your favorite surprise or good surprises?
Oh, it's just Europe is sensational. I mean, whether you're going for travel or for work or for a wedding, it's just sensational. And it's a very different beast than doing something, certainly in Hawaii, but definitely on the mainland too. I would say, surprising wise, the costs are just so different
Mhm.
in Europe. For us and for our clients, quite frankly, it's more cost effective for the most part, depending on your location. But the food, the flowers, the venues themselves can be significantly more cost effective than what you're going to find on the mainland. Some other things you might spend a little bit more on, depending on you being specific. So rentals and things like that. If you want to be specific, that can add a little cost due to shipping into Europe. But for the most part, what was a nice surprise for us is just how much further our client's dollar can go when doing
Mhm.
weddings in Europe. It gives us a lot more freedom for design creativity and for fun things and to have these like great wow moments for our clients and less
Yeah.
worrying about spending the whole budget on just one thing.
Hmm. Well, that's cool. I would have
Yeah.
actually thought it would have been the other way around, more expensive to go to Europe. So that's kind of interesting.
When you
Mhm.
take into account like flying there and all of that, it's still kind of across the board is going to be more cost effective. And it is,
Yeah.
most people think it'll be more expensive, and it really isn't. Not for the couple themselves, for sure.
Okay. Are
Yeah.
there any emerging trends in luxury weddings that you're kind of excited about to incorporate or into future events?
There's a couple, it depends on the event itself or the design, but design wise, I mean, like fashion for 2025 is really going back into some of that Chantilly lace look. Those Baroque drop waist dresses are stunning right now. They have like the big kind of hip swell for the um, skirts, very Bridgerton sort of vibes every once in a while. So some of that more like traditional classic romantic look is coming back,
Mhm.
but then we're pairing that with a bridal dress, something that is going to be really fun for dancing and after parties and feathers and sparkles and all of that sort of thing. So fashion wise, design wise, that's really into it. Location wise, I know Taryn was saying that
Mhm.
Portugal is really on the rise, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, Portugal is on the rise in terms of destination locations in Europe, which is really fun. I've been to Porto and the Azores. Danny's been to Lisbon. We're actually going back to Lisbon this coming March. And so we're just really excited to see it's something a little bit different. I think for a season there, it was really all about Italy and the south of France. And obviously, Italy is always going to be amazing and beautiful, and the south of France is always going to be amazing and beautiful. But the luxury destination industry did really get inundated with all of those Italian. Like I can't tell you how many weddings we've seen at the Villa Balbianello in Lake Como. Like it's every other week we see a wedding there, which is great. Except for it does get a little bit redundant. So it's exciting to see some new up and coming. Ireland is big right now as well. Scotland is kind of on the rise. And so that's really exciting in terms of venues.
Mhm.
I also think that just overall, something I'm excited about in the industry is that our clients are in a new generation now. So we are getting ready to service weddings for Gen Z, which is just really exciting because for a long time, all of our clients were millennials, which we are millennials. So we love millennials and, that's fantastic. But
Mhm.
Gen Z is a really special kind of client, I think, in the sense that they have different values than we do in this older generation. And so I am excited to see they're really some of the trends, and this was just recently released for trends in 2025 with the not.com. But some of the trends are they're just really focused on wedding weeks instead of wedding days, which is what Danny and I specialize in, excuse me. And so it's really fun to see that that's something that our future inquiries do already prioritize because it just fits in really well with how we already plan our experiences for our couples. They're also really focused on family connections and authenticity. Again, something that's super important for Danny and I, as she was already discussing, as we go through the discovery process. We want to know about their family. We want to know about their culture. We want to know how we can make every single guest feel like it's they're being touched and their priorities are being met at the events. And so having again the clients already coming in with that priority, I'm really excited because I think it's going to be a great fit for how Danny and I already approach the planning process. And so I don't want to call it like an easier sell, but it just feels like it's going to be a more like a super authentic connection with the future clients that we're getting ready to serve.
Oh, great. So,
Mhm.
what's some advice you would give to couples who are planning their weddings to keep the process meaningful and stress-free?
Well, the obvious is to hire a planner,
There you go.
but it's true.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important for if there's any, brides and grooms listening to this to know what the difference is between a wedding planner versus a wedding coordinator or an on-site planner.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, typically speaking, when you're going through the wedding planning process, you are either booking your venue first or a wedding planner first. And those can kind of swap. Sometimes you book a planner, then the venue, or the venue, then the planner.
Or
But
you're looking at the same time, which
sure.
I find a lot. Like a lot of my inquiries are like, oh, I've already reached out to six venues in conjunction to, four planners.
Right, exactly. And so sometimes there'll be some confusion because venues will oftentimes have a on-site planner
Mhm.
or a wedding coordinator, which is a more common phrasing too. That is not the same thing as a wedding
Mhm.
planner. And they can, on the surface, seem like the same thing. So for couples, it gets very confusing as to why you would spend extra, quote unquote, for a wedding planner
Mhm.
when there's one included. But a wedding coordinator or on-site manager or planner, their priorities are very different than what a wedding planner's priorities are.
Yes,
So when you're getting somebody through a venue, their loyalty and priority is to their venue. So
correct.
as a girl that came up through hotels and planning weddings through hotels, I loved planning weddings. It was great. But at the end of the day, my sales goals and my quotas and my reviews as to how good I was at my job was based off of how much money I was bringing in through weddings for the hotel. Versus as planners, the way that we know if we're doing a good job is through reviews from our clients, right? So the structure to give more and to really focus in on the clients, to really focus in on what, their budget is, what their vision is, all of that is like that's on a planner and that is what drives a planner versus when you're looking at a venue location. And that's not to say that a venue planner doesn't care about the wedding or care about their clients. They absolutely do, but their structure is just a little bit different and their experience is a bit different. They're more on the side of, generally speaking, food and beverage and sales and like hotel stays where the guests going to stay and making sure the guests are comfortable in their stay versus a wedding planner and a designer like Taryn and I, we're the whole wedding weekend. Like, what does the guest experience look like? Are they too warm? Are they too cold? Are we going to need pashminas on this day? What are the dietary restrictions? What is the music? Like, it is a much bigger picture when you're working with a planner and designer. So that is a big difference between the two. And Taryn, you might have other things too.
No, I agree, and I actually think it's a threefold difference. There are event coordinators or planners on site. There are wedding planners, and then there's a wedding planning and design firm. We are the last of those three. We are wedding planning and design. Danny owns her own business. That's a branch of TS Wed as my business partner, and it's a bag design studio. She is a designer. Like she has the accolades to actually be a designer, as opposed to a wedding planner. I personally am not a designer. I would never flout myself as a designer, which is why I have Danny, amongst many other reasons. But I think that there's a big difference between hiring a wedding planner who knows how to populate a preset mood board versus having a planner and a designer who's going to prioritize the full scope, like you were saying, Danny, of your wedding week experience. And not only have the accolades of a really sensational planner who knows how to execute beautifully and bring the vision to life, but also have that designer that comes in and creates the vision and casts the vision and makes it something that is completely unique and tailored to the individual couple. So I think that that's probably, I agree with you, Danny. That's a really important thing to advise clients of, and it is an education process as we're talking with our couples that are interested in our services, of being like, yes, I am aware that the event coordinator on that property is free and that we are not. but there's a difference and here's what it is. So that can be a nuanced educational moment when we're chatting with our clients.
Right.
Yeah, I can see where that is a confusion as far as what the venue is offering and what you offer. So
Mhm.
other than wedding planner, what's maybe a detail you think is overlooked in wedding planning that could make a significant impact?
I think that for us in the destination wedding world, I think travel planning is oftentimes overlooked. People think like, great, my guests are going to go ahead and, as long as you're, wherever the location is, as long as you're in Barcelona by this date, have fun and go ahead and get there. That can be very overwhelming to people that are not travel bugs.
Mhm.
The traveling world, especially post COVID, is more complicated than it has ever been before. And it's constantly changing. The landscape of travel is constantly changing. And so I think not having the forethought to extend the offer of a travel planner, a seasoned travel planner to your guests can be a faux pas. Again, that is something that TS Wed manages directly. So we partner with a travel planner. We partner with Britta Heath Travel. She is exquisite. She's been our partner for years, and she offers insane services to our clients. She can book wedding room blocks on their behalf. She can book villas and be in Airbnbs on their behalf. She can help coordinate transportation and flights. She curates wedding websites exclusively for destination clients so that she can upload and populate the timeline on there, the directions, the insights, the suggestions, the recommendations. You can book trips with her outside of the wedding week days. And so being able to offer that extra service to your guests, it's a higher touch experience that really allows your guests to feel like they're being well hosted.
Right. And
Which if you're hosting a destination wedding, you're hosting travel. So I
And
think that matters.
what's nice about that too is that takes some of the onus off of the couple themselves because when you have a
Mm-hmm.
travel planner like that, your guests can just go to the travel planner directly rather than go to the couple, say, wait, what day are you guys getting in again? And what day should I get in again? And wait, how do we get from point A to point B? Because oftentimes what's overwhelming for couples is the inundation of their friends and family asking them questions, asking them what to do and how to do it, especially when it's a destination, someplace that they haven't been before. So offering that is, minimal amount of work to save you a maximum amount of stress and
Right.
overload from from your friends and from your family. And so it's just kind of a great little tip to avoid some of that unnecessary stress.
Yeah.
Well, I've seen some pictures of your wedding, and I have my two favorites. I'll tell you my two favorites. So I love the wedding you did with the glass chapel.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I love the wedding that you did that kind of had like an Alice in Wonderland theme with those gigantic flowers.
They are
Yes.
Like
flowers.
those were, I thought those were amazing. But what are some of your favorite unique stories about weddings?
I mean, there's
Oh,
just
so many.
so many good ones. I will say one of my favorite, just like funny moments, not even funny, I don't know the right word for this, but a moment from a wedding that no amount of planning could have saved us from. And it ended up being just like this great moment, though, and great story for this wedding. We did a wedding on Maui at the Oluwalu House, which is this gorgeous, oceanfront venue,
Oh, I know what you're going
great
to talk
big
about. You're
your
absolutely
eight
right.
foot lawn.
Yeah.
It is an amazing venue. We do lots of weddings there. But the road to get to that venue, it's one lane coming in, one lane coming out. It is a very small little road, and something happened, a pole went down or something, and the road was closed. So right when all of the guests are supposed to be coming to the venue, the road shuts down. Now at that venue, the bride and the bridesmaids tend to already be on site. So for us, we already had our bride and we had, I think, her sister and her best friend
Yeah, it was
with
small. It was like maybe
three
two
people.
people. Yeah.
Right. And the road's closed. And the groom and his dad had been on their way because they were supposed to do their first look and some photos and stuff. So he was supposed to get there just 15 minutes before the rest of the guests. And our sweet bride is trying to keep it together. She's going, What do I do? Nobody can get here. And the power was down and we couldn't get a hold of anybody. And like, what are we going to do? Right. Another reason to have a planner. Taryn and I took care of it. But we're like, honestly, again, no amount of planning. We're like, okay, how do we proceed forward? Like, what can we do? Let's get her something to drink. Let's get her something to eat. Like, it kind of is what it is at this point. And we reach out. One of our musician for that wedding was a local cop. So he's a police officer on Maui, and so he knows all the inside scoops, and we're dear friends with him. And so we were like, "Hey, Marvin, like, what's the deal? Like, give us the inside scoop so we can, make sure our bride stays calm and she knows what's going on." And so he just, oh, like the road's closed, they're gonna open it up, probably gonna take like an hour or so. And we're like, oh my gosh, okay. We're like, oh, I wonder where the groom is. I wonder where the groom is. So it ends up the groom and his father show up and they're just walking up to the house. The groom has his jacket, his like tuxedo jacket over his shoulder. The dad's like mopping sweat off his face.
They're so sweaty. They're
So
so sweaty.
sweaty. And we're like, oh my gosh, like you're here. How did this happen? So they had gotten into an Uber to get to the wedding venue. The road got closed. They sat there for a while. They realized the road was going to get closed for a while. And the groom and dad just kind of looked at each other and they were like, all right, we're walking. And was like, I got to get to my girl. And so they just hopped out of the Uber and in their full tuxedo blacks walked, I don't know, a mile, 2 miles.
They like went through a pasture. They hopped a fence. No, this is true. They went
Yeah.
through like a cow pasture. They hopped fences. They
And like
like
they like it was like an adventure to get to that hotel, to get to the venue. And they said like on the main road as they were getting close to the venue, because obviously all these cars were stuck, and so these cars were seeing these two tuxedoed men walking down the street, which is not normal for Hawaii. And so they said people were rolling down their window being like, hey, where are you going, like what's going on? And the groom just every time was like trying to make it to my wedding. And so people were like cheering him
like
on,
honking.
honking for him and being like, good luck, you've got it, man. It was as he's telling the story and he's telling his bride, like the both of them are like crying. And it was just this amazing, lovely moment.
We're crying.
Oh, we were
Like, everyone
sobbing.
was
We were a
crying.
disaster. We were just mad that the videographer didn't capture all of this, but how would they?
Yeah.
But like it was just this amazing moment, and it ends up like they had this really touching moment, and like now they have this story they can always tell of their wedding of how like, to their kids, like your dad walked 2 miles through this and through that to get to me on our wedding day. And the road opened up and everything was fine, right? The ceremony got pushed back, I don't know, maybe by an hour, but
Yeah.
guests got drinks the minute they got there, and the bride and groom had ended up getting just so much extra time to take photos together. And so it ended up being just like really wonderful, but a moment of real panic and concern for sure.
Well, that's fun. Do you have one too, Taryn?
Oh gosh, I certainly do. I have like 17 million. I think that the story I always tell is about our wedding in Barcelona. We did a wedding at a beautiful villa in Barcelona, and we we're actually staying. The vendors were all staying on property at the wedding venue because the setup was a multi-day setup, and so we ended up renting it and staying there on site. And so when we first rolled up, a couple days before the first event, right next door there were these beautiful white horses. They were white mares and they were like pure white, just and they're on the rolling hills just outside Barcelona with like all the Spanish trees. Oh, it's just so beautiful. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like it's a sign, like this is so great, it's so beautiful. And I was so excited, way more excited than anybody else. And I hopped the fence as one would and, made friends with the horses. And then they trotted off in the like tons of acreage. I mean, fields upon fields upon fields that these horses lived in. And we didn't see them again. And we went about and did all the things that we needed to do. And the wedding day came and the bride was in her suite getting her hair and makeup done. And lo and behold, I come outside and the horses are back. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to get the bride. And I mean, when I say I hopped a fence, it was like the biggest death trap of a Spanish fence you've ever seen in your life. It was like logs that had barbed wire wrapped around, like razor wire kind of barbed wire. Like it was rusty.
Very rugged, very rugged.
Yeah, very rugged. So definitely not something that the average bride getting her hair and makeup done in her like negligee would want to do. And so I went up to the photo video team and I said, you guys, there are horses. There are white horses. Like, we have to get the bride over to the white horses. And they both looked at me like I was an absolute psycho. And they were like, it's like dangerous. You could like get hepatitis trying to get in there. Like, what are you talking about? We're not doing that. We don't have time for that. That's not going to happen. And I was like, oh, okay. I look at Danny and she's just sitting there. I'm like, why aren't you backing me up? She's like, nope, we got to have good cop, bad cop. Like, you got this. I'm going to sit here. Like, you do you. And I was like, fine. So I go up to the bride and I'm like, how are you? And she's this teeny, sweet, petite, absolute beauty. Like, I mean, she's what, like 5'3", 5'4" at best, and like a size 0, and just gorgeous long hair. And she's this very beautiful couture negligee on.
Yeah, she's in her like silk and lace negligee.
Silk and lace and like all the things. And I was like,
crispy.
how are we doing? And she was like, we're so great. She's so nice. And I said, and the photo video team is in there with her. And I said, do you like horses? She looks at me and goes, gets very serious. I love horses. Oh, okay. So there are 2 white horses, white like mares that just showed up.
And mind you, the photo video team is behind the bride like this to Taryn.
They're so not happy. And I was like, what? And I was like, so it's like definitely like a trespassing situation because it's not on our property and it's like really rugged and like you could maybe get like cut and bleed and like, but it could be really great. And she shot up and was like, absolutely, I am here for this. I'm going to put my shoes on. She puts on her Prada platform shoes, and it's like, they're like this, they're so big. They're this big. Yeah. And she like books it out, and I look at the photo video team and they're like, they hate me. They hate me. They hate me. And we go, and that sweet little pixie of a bride just hopped the fence and made nice with all the horses, did not care. And we got
epic.
The most beautiful photo and video. I can't even. It is to date. It is one of my favorite videos I have ever had of any wedding that we've ever done. And it is because of the horses and her great attitude of being like, absolutely, we're going to do that. Like, what are you talking about? And it was
photo video came around.
They did. They followed us over. We later found out that the reason the cinematographer did not want to do it is because he was deathly afraid of horses. He called them creatures of war for the rest of the trip. And we were like, I'm so sorry. I made you face a fear.
That sounds wonderful. I'm going to have to look up those pictures.
Oh, so beautiful.
So what advice would you give to couples who are trying to balance like traditions and what they might want as a fresh and unique wedding?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for a little while now, the like typical quote unquote wedding traditions have started to go by the wayside. I would say, Taryn, would you say like 50% of our couples still do them, if that?
I think it depends on the tradition, right? I think that like a bouquet toss and a garter belt toss, like those are done. Those have been done for years and years and years. But like wedding cakes, on the other hand, that went out for a little while, and I feel like it's back in.
Right.
So it just depends on the couple.
Yeah, so I think, if there are wedding traditions or there are cultural traditions that couples really like, they're still included, but it's based off intentionality and not just habit of always having these things included. Especially like Taryn was saying with Gen Z, things are more intentional. So if they are doing a tradition, it's because it brings everybody closer together, because it's this special moment, it's this thing. They're not just doing it to just like, okay, well, let's just cut the cake real quick so that we can say we cut it and then let's move on. They want that to be a moment. And maybe, the cake, for instance, Tara and I just did a wedding in West Virginia where the wedding cake was an exact replica of the groom's parents' cake, who had been married for 50 years. And so that was a way of the tradition of having a wedding cake they still had, but they made it specific to them and their love story and how they both come from both of the bride and the groom had parents who had these long, beautiful marriages. And so they wanted to kind of honor that into their wedding by having that replica cake that the groom's parents had no idea was going to be there. And so it was a really amazing moment where it was tradition, but it was unique to the couple and modern and a new take. So I think looking to the past and finding intentional moments within your culture or your family story that is really a grounding place for everybody and something that more than just the couple might recognize, right? Something that brings in your guests to that moment
Mhm.
and then go full force, do it. Like, let's make that tradition a real part of the story of your wedding day.
Yeah. And I think too, with respect to like cultural traditions and not just wedding day traditions, I agree with what Danny said completely about just going full force if it's something that is going to be meaningful for you and or your family and friends. That beautiful wedding that you were just referencing with the glass atrium was a wedding where the bride was from South Korea and they had a really beautiful Korean wedding ceremony that they didn't want to spend the Western ceremony time on, but they wanted to honor it specifically for the brides, especially for her mom, who was a very big and important part of the day. And so it's called a payback ceremony, and they ended up basically shrinking it down to a period of time that they felt comfortable with as a couple. They didn't want to spend an hour and a half on it. And so we got it down to about 20 minutes. And they had the traditional attire. We made sure that it was there and ready for them to put on over their wedding attire, their Western wedding attire. And they were able to have this ceremony immediately following the Western ceremony that was super important to the especially the parents of the bride, without interfering with the couple's idea of what their perfect day would have been. And so they didn't cut corners and just not do it. But they didn't acquiesce because it's tradition and then therefore not get the day that they wanted. But we were able to all together, it was really a group effort, I think, between Danny, myself, and the couple, really bring it to a place of, okay, great. Like, we're being really intentional about this. We're making sure that this is a part and an important part of your wedding day while making sure that we honor the experience that you guys want to have as a couple. And so not cutting corners, but being intentional.
Totally.
Great. All right. So if you were planning a wedding, say a dream wedding in your mind, what are some unique elements that you would include?
Like, ooh, I was about to talk about my client. Danny probably went to design. I went straight to what kind of client do I want? I would speak to, I think that both Danny and I, we've we had a couple of experiences in the last couple of years that were challenging with clients. And we're really lucky because I would say 99% of our clients are just pure gold. And we have lasting relationships with them. I just shipped off a new baby gift to one of our clients from 3 years ago. And so we really develop lasting relationships with our clients and become friends with them and are really invested in their lives. And so I would just say that now more than ever, after having a couple of challenging experiences with a client or two, I think that the number one thing that I would want if I were picking a perfect wedding, would be a client that we really authentically and genuinely connect with, where there's mutual trust and respect. Because when that relationship exists, it enables us to go above and beyond. And we want to, like, if we love our people and if they love us, we are going to make magic together. That glass atrium couple that we had, that will forevermore be one of, if not our favorite clients of all time, because we had a relationship and we forged that relationship for nearly 2 years, right, in their planning process, and being able to have authentic relationship with our clients where there's mutual trust and respect and kindness and love, that just, it yields such a beautiful experience for not only the couple, but all of their family members and friends, and ultimately for us and the vendors as well. A completely unforgettable and magical experience, regardless of the details that go into it. So that would be my favorite piece.
I think from a design perspective, it's we we just like being creative and doing something new and different, and again, like just going all out for it. So oftentimes, clients say, "Well, I really like this design, but I want to like mute it down because it's a wedding and it has to X, Y, and Z." More and more, especially as destination weddings, like this wedding it doesn't have to be whatever traditional elements we have in our head. It can be this true expression of who this couple is and who their family is. And so, like, let's just do it. Like, if there's a funky design or a cool color, like, it doesn't always have to be white or green. Or if you want a white and green wedding, cool. What's a different, unique way we can do that? Can the white, instead of coming from flowers, come from something else, from foliage or from books? Or, like, let's be creative and have this as a visual expression of the couple and who they are, and it doesn't have to fit into any sort of wedding box per
Mhm.
se. And so I think, like finding or having clients that who can really just trust, like, let's make this cool and unique and different and something that not only is exciting for them and their guests, but exciting for Taryn and I, who have done a million weddings at this point and seen so many different things. Like there's always new stuff that we can do. And
Mhm.
so having that like fun design element or that cool moment, right? We've my latest thing is trying to pitch clients to do flash tattoos at their like cocktail hour. Be so cool. What a cool story. Like for the right couple, for a couple that like tattoos and that sort of artistry is important to them and that would have guests that would be into that too. Like what a cool element that like doesn't happen at weddings and isn't typical for weddings, but that's something that people would talk about forever and ever and ever. So stuff like that, we want to have these cool moments. And
Mhm.
design wise, it's really fun to plan for and design at.
Oh, wonderful. All right, so I'm going to have your contact information below. Any closing thoughts?
Oh,
No, thank you so much for having us. What a
yeah.
and we love your podcast and we love being able to be a part of it and we see the value in what you're doing and just thank you. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Yeah,
Oh,
this
well,
was awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah, well, it's an honor. Hey, Giant Builders, if you liked this episode, make sure to check out these episodes as well. I think you'll enjoy them. And also, please follow us on our social media. The links are in the description. All right, well, Giant Builders, we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening. This has been The Giant Builders with Lois Wyant.